Fight one! Ready? Fire!
Greetings. You could say that I've had an unreal experience getting mogged by Akira multiple times while playing Virtua Fighter 4 for the first time since I was a kid with a rabbit tooth. I'm still coping for Bloodborne 2 and rolling the dice whether to War for Thunder or reach the finals. But other than that, I really have had an unreal time thanks to a particular game that I found on the market while digging through the low poly mines looking for any boomer shooter to add any meaning to my magical life. Well, I found a game where you kill blood, with crisis level graphics that will light your PC brighter than a J.J. Abrams movie, Bloodkill. This is a solo FPS project made by Slamaway Games, who had previously made another very similar title called Kazakhstan Invades, a horde shooter where guns do the talking and players do the shooting. Well, hardly in Australia anyways. Bloodkill on the surface level will seem alarming due to its visual presentation as well as the reusing of assets. With asset flipping, it's actually used quite often, pretty much all the time. Just look at From Software games and their infamous habit for reusing bosses, or worse, turning bosses into minions. But asset flipping isn't inherently a bad thing, and when used in relation to the visionary goal for the game, its world and setting, the right application of asset reuse can actually hasten development while still maintaining a level of quality that's to be expected when you're asking for money. With Bloodkill, you won't be paying too much attention to anything else besides what you're given, and given the small pool of content and the simplistic gameplay, I'd say that the price here is pretty fitting. In saying that, it does have that unfinished look to it, as if you cobbled a collection of textures ready to use weapons from other projects and also a similar template for the camera and movement. It would be understandable if you got the ick from looking at this, but do not despair. Contrary to its asset flip energy, it somehow squirts out a basic, functional, but enjoyable sense of old school movement and gunplay that is very straight to the point. Bloodkill is a what you see is what you get game. You're never going to get anything further than what you see in this product. Instead of the brain growing, it'll instead smooth out until you become a mindless zombie on wheels, purging Unreal Engine Store enemies and massacring them with Unreal Engine Store weapons in this Unreal game. Unreal Engine is a complicated relationship. I will always love my Unreal tournaments, but will always hate what was done to it. I've seen some great titles come out of the engine, but it also invites a lot of slop that you may regret trying or even looking at in the first place. It's also an engine with the general expectation for closer to real life graphics, and sometimes it actually does get pretty close. However, that doesn't stop people from creating more artistic looking games. I mean, literally, Fortnite is the biggest example I could give here, but most people can only stomach Godzilla with Nikes for so long. Anyways, I've seen some other artistically interesting Unreal titles and projects, Deadlink, and if the gameplay is genuinely interesting for me or the setting is interesting, then I'll keep a close watch on it. Bloodkill, however, is one of those games where it cobbles up different textures and assets and has a combination of ugly geometry but decent looking weapons and monsters. Bloodkill isn't a very appealing game visually, nor does it run that well either a lot of the times, especially during fights where you get serious Sam-sized enemy counts in the arena and it either leads to choppy frame rates or game crashes. Other Unreal games made by smaller indie devs also seem to have issues with optimizing the game. Metal Eden was one example, but that game has a lot more going for it to be fair. Bloodkill should run like butter given its more basic but somewhat nostalgic look that kinda makes it seem like a polished open source 2000s arena shooter. Some of you may not remember these games, but back in the day you had some old school open source arena shooters that you could play for free and even enjoy. Two particular favorites of mine that I played here and there at different points in my life were Zonotic, which used to be known as Nexus, and Cube 2 Sauerbraten. These two games felt good to play and had great movement, especially if you were fiending for more Quake 3 styled action. Cube 2 in particular had the luxury of also operating like an engine where people could make their own games within it and also their own maps. When I was playing through Bloodkill, it kind of reminded me of those games, funny enough, because the level of quality here, the basic but functional look of the graphics and the level design made it seem like something a person would make on these older engines, or things like Cube 2 or an FPS Creator or, Game Guru for instance. These sort of platforms where developing was somewhat accessible as long as you were willing to put up with the limitations. Nowadays though, Unreal and Unity and Godot seem to be the replacement engines for aspiring indie developers that want to try and make their own game. Doesn't matter whether it's good or not, if they can finish it and get the job done, then hey, they're a game developer now. But some projects that I've played were amateurish to the point where I couldn't ever imagine that the developers themselves would see themselves going out of their way to enjoy playing their creation, where a lot of jank and lack of polish just makes it more of an experiment for game dev learning, rather than a game that you would actually imagine yourself playing. Hell, I wouldn't even touch my own amateur projects unless it was for video purposes. In saying that though, Bloodkill actually does feel like a game that the developer would have fun playing, and why is that exactly? Because the fundamentals have enough polish where even despite the simplicity of the visuals and the gameplay, the environments having no story or substance to make it memorable, it does offer a level of blood and carnage that will make Serious Sam and maybe even Painkiller fans appreciate the nods given in this game. You have 5 levels, some armor and health upgrades, secrets to uncover and weapons to obtain to boom and shoot, but beyond that, there really isn't anything else to it. Bloodkill is the most simple and straight to the point boomer shooter that I've ever played, because everything else outside of the gameplay like story, lore, setting, dialogue, it all gets thrown out the window here, where only the singular desire for blood counts here. Each weapon that you find is projectile based, and tracking is king here. Enemies will melee or projectile vomit across the arena, attacking in random directions because why not? On top of some key hunting, environmental traps, green poisonous farts, and a roster of asset store looking enemies, the movement here is kind of like Quake. You can strafe jump for more speed, circle jump to reach harder platforms, and occasionally you may even get a snippet of Counter-Strike surfing through sliding. I haven't done the angle surfing yet though, but there is some sliding to enjoy here. The gunplay has you shoot and nothing more. Enemies blow up into gibbets and adds more flavor to the environment after they're dead. Bloodkill is a game that will make me repeat myself if I keep talking about it, because there really isn't anything else outside of the movement. There's no story, not even background or a setting as far as I know as to what you're doing and why. You just have your guns, your monsters, and you just kill. That's it. You're pretty much like Festus in this game, and when the bell rings, there's only one thing to do. Story in boomer shooters generally don't matter much. If it's good, it's a bonus, but it's not expected. However, I do like to at least have an interesting setting, and this game doesn't really have it at all. All it really has going for it is just the simple but somewhat polished and enjoyable gameplay that will keep you entertained for a couple of hours. Now, some simple and straight to the point games can still be great and still be highly replayable. This isn't one of them though. That is, unless you're madly in love with the game where time ceases to exist. In another game called Superflight, it's a game with a zen-like state of flying across generated worlds. One player is still presumably playing, 20,000 plus hours later. Bloodkill may give you more mileage than you expect, or at least more mileage than I expect, but after one playthrough and a few dogshit bosses, and a casual dive into the hard mode to see what it was like, I was pretty much done. I could go into all of the 5 levels in detail, but instead I'm just going to say that give this game a chance. It doesn't have much going for it in comparison to, say, other boomer shooters that I've played. It's great that a solo dev was still able to make an old school Serious Sam style shooter and actually make it fun to play, despite it looking like an asset flip. And again, I want to emphasize that asset flips aren't necessarily a bad thing if you use them right. And game dev is a very long, arduous and tedious process of trial and error that makes content creating pale in comparison. A game like this, depending on the circumstances in one's life, could take months, a year, or even years, and it's even harder on your own. So for anyone that wants to get into game dev, I'll offer a few personal pointers. Number 1, start with a completed and polished fun to play level, where you can then snowball it into more levels, even if it's still in the prototype stage. Number 2, don't be afraid to use other assets and templates if you have to speed things up. Engines and resources are tools for your dream to come true and nothing more. And number 3, there's no right or wrong engine, only the one that works best for your project and your workflow. Nevertheless, Bloodkill was a short but sweet smooth brain shooter that wasn't as bad as I thought. It has some nice metal tracks that isn't just trying to be Mick Gordon, it has a bit of a 2000s vibe to it. Blood and gore and physics are fun, the movement and the gunplay is more polished than you would expect. The biggest cons are mainly the optimization issues it still has. There's no story or setting to make it really stand out, and the UI is very basic, like how to make a game tutorial basic. As it stands, the project is now complete and the developer has moved on to a successor called Bloodkill Gore Blast Overkill, where we may be killing more than blood, but we may also be killing gore, where it's a more ambitious and realized version that seems to have a bit more going for it, and also some additional mechanics to make the gameplay more interesting. However, one suggestion that I would make to the developer is to also include a horde mode of sorts, kind of like what you would have in Serious Sam. You can only play through levels for so long and in a game like this, and having a horde mode for smooth brain sessions or the desire to unwind after a stressful day of work will give your next project a bit more mileage. I look forward to the next installment, and while we're waiting, I would still recommend Bloodkill despite its shortcomings. But if you're looking for something beyond just gameplay where you want to feel moved through story or delve into lore like it's a Souls game, then move on. We're only here to kill blood. Stay safe everyone, and thanks for watching.
No!